Germany is home to countless abandoned and haunted places, famous ghosts, strange untold stories and urban legends. In fact, German literature owes much of its fame to its legends of terror, which are characterized by their age and their frightening nature. Regardless of the veracity of the stories, here are a few German ghosts and urban legends based on real events that I'm going to share with you right now. Legend has it that a family unknowingly lives with a spirit that hides in their house. Objects disappear or move from one place to another, and they find objects that don't belong to them in the bins. They have even started joking that there is a ghost. The real crime behind this place took place in March 1922 on a German farm called Entière. Andreas Gerber, the owner, began to notice that little things were missing or out of place. His family of 5 plus the housekeeper, 6 people in all, swore they heard footsteps, but no one took the time to really investigate what was going on in their own home. Until one tragic night, when all the members of the family were killed in their sleep by the phenomenon that inhabited their walls. Kezia Gruber, 72, her husband Andreas, 63, their daughter Victoria, 35, their grandchildren Kezia, 7, and Joseph, 2, and their maid Maria, 44. All were attacked with pickaxes. The bodies were discovered 4 days later by a group of neighbors who were concerned about Kezia's absence from school and the fact that no one was answering phone calls at home. The bodies of Andreas and Victoria were piled up in the barn. Mary died in her bedroom and Joseph, the baby, was murdered in his cot. Maria, the maid, had replaced the previous employee who had resigned because she had heard noises in the attic of the house, and her instinct drove her to leave that place. Obviously, it was the best decision of her life. According to 8 witness accounts at the time, it was someone who had been hiding in the attic for some time. But one day, he was caught and the story turned into a bloody drama. Incredibly, and adding to the mystery of this case, the animals were fed, someone ate in the kitchen and the mail was received as usual on Saturday, the day before the deceased were found. A few weeks before his death, Andreas Gruber heard footsteps in the cellar, and when he went to see what it was all about, he found an unknown diary and realized that a bunch of keys to the house had been stolen. Obviously, this was still not enough evidence to involve the police or even to leave the house. Among the suspects, Lawrence Schintenbauer has always been the most important, as it was he who led the search until the murdered family was found. According to the police, he admitted to having had a relationship with Victoria and even claimed that little Joseph was his son and not that of her late husband. A few years earlier, Schintenbauer had become a widower and lost the only child he had with his second wife. In fact, he and Victoria had planned to marry until Gruber interfered with their plans. In any case, he was never found guilty. But the family story doesn't end there. According to the acquaintances of the Grubers, it is quite possible that Andreas himself was Joseph's father, as rumor had it in town that he was in love with his daughter. Some also claim that they had more than one child. More than 100 years have passed since this dramatic situation in the Bavarian region, and also many other names have been questioned and arrested over the years. No one knows who took their lives on the night of 31st March 1922. If this story is so terrifying, it's because not only it is based on a true story, but it's happened several times in different countries. The best known being the Denver Spider-Man case. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to make a new video about this one. The next time you hear a noise in your attic, check it out for yourself before the next story I tell is yours. This ghost played a part in the great tragedies of the Hohenzollerns and Habsburgs, excuse my accent, I don't speak a word of German, at the beginning of 1901, when the rumors spread at the Berlin court that a ghostly figure had appeared in the palace announcing the imminent death of a member of the German imperial family. Everyone thought the worst for the seriously ill Empress Victoria. But at least, let's be honest, this reassured half of the family who were not concerned by this apparition. Other Prussians claimed that the mysterious figure was the White Lady, whose appearance always heralded the death of a member of the Hohenzollern dynasty, or some serious problem for the dynasty. In fact, the Dowager Empress died a few weeks later. Nobody knew who or what the White Lady was, but her presence had terrorized the Hohenzollern dynasty, and the legend continued for centuries. According to legend, she was the mistress of a Margrave from the same royal line. What is a Margrave, you ask? Well, it's simply a German nobleman of higher rank, with whom she had several children, even though the Margrave was already married. After the death of the Margrave's wife, the mistress, irritated by the widow's refusal to marry her, killed her own children, believing them to be the obstacle separating her from the marriage. According to legend, the death of the princess was avenged by condemning the woman to be buried alive. When she died, she vowed to appear whenever a Hohenzollern prince was about to die, a promise that she said to have kept for centuries. According to another version of the same legend, Joachim I, Prince Elector of Brandenburg in the 16th century, wanted to extend his castle but realized that he couldn't do so properly because a widow's modest house was taking up part of the land he needed. As a good feudal lord, he ordered the demolition of the widow's house. After all, why not? Nobody cares except the widow herself. The poor woman, not believing that such an injustice had been ordered by the prince, threw herself at his feet and begged him to help her. The prince, behaving like a good prince, offered her a little piece of paradise in the south of France with a pension until her death. Of course, I'm talking about legends and not Disney accounts. As you can imagine, the truth is very different. The prince abruptly ordered her to leave his presence. Then, the widow turned to him and said,
"You take everything I own, and what's more, you drive me from your presence without wanting to do me justice. When your time comes, and that of your loved ones, I will appear before you to remind you of the crime you have just committed."
Historians claim that the great Elector William of Brandenburg saw the ghost of the White Lady shortly before his death. Frederick William, the eccentric father of Frederick II the Great of Prussia, called his Chamberian one evening to... You don't know what is a Chamberian? Don't worry, I'm here to guide you and confuse you at the same time. It's quite simply a court gentleman in charge of looking after the sovereign's bedroom. In two words, it's the housekeeper version luxury hotel. To repeat, this Chamberlain was called to tell him that he had just seen the ghostly woman and ordered him to bring the coffin in which he was to be buried to her bedside, to see if he could adapt to it. He did well, because he died a few days later. Prince Ludwig of Prussia and his aide, Count Neuslitz, claimed to have seen the White Lady in Schwarzburg-Rudolstadt Castle on the night before the Battle of Saalfeld in 1806, when they were talking about the certainty of victory. The battle was lost, and the White Lady was seen again as the Prussian army retreated. The story was told by Neuslitz's son to Emperor Frederick III, whose death from cancer was also predicted by an apparition. The Habsburg dynasty, which ruled Burgundy, the Holy Roman Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, also had its own legend of the White Lady, who appeared to emperors and archduques to tell them they were about to leave for the afterlife. In Spain, the first time she appeared was at the Spanish monastery of Yuste in 1558 to announce the death of the Emperor Charles V, of the House of Habsburg, a woman dressed in white with a tail. A woman dressed in white with her whole tail was seen in the sovereign's bedroom. It's not known whether the White Lady was the only one to appear before the Emperor or whether there were several, but it is certain that Juana la Loca's son took the hint and organized the famous funeral during which, according to the story, she lay in her coffin while the monks of Yuste celebrated Mass, so that when the time came, everything would go perfectly. As the future Empress Maria Luisa, accompanied by her sister Leopoldina, watches over her dying mother, the little Archduchess suddenly asks who the lady in white is who has just entered the room.
It was the white lady who came looking for me.
25 years later, she appeared to Maria Luisa's own son, who had died at Schönbrunn Palace. Some time later, in 1889, a chamberlain of the royal household and peasants claimed to have seen the lady prowling around the imperial hunting lodge at Mayerling. A few hours before the body of Archduke Rudolf and his mistress, incidentally, was found, both shot in the head. According to the French newspaper Le Figaro, in its edition of 5th February 1889, the lady appeared before Rudolf that night. As for the funny anecdote about the Mayerling murder case, it's a bit like Romeo and Juliet. According to the unofficial story, as the royal family wished to avoid too much scandal and refute this theory, although it is the most possible. Archduke Rudolf was shot in the head that night by his mistress, Baroness Marie Wetzera, who then committed suicide. Another story is based on 8 September 1898, when Elizabeth, Sissi to her friends, woke up with a start in her room at the Hotel Beau Rivage in Geneva and told her mistress, Countess Ida Florenzi, that she thought she had seen the mysterious shadow that had visited the Habsburgs before their death. 2 days later, as she was about to take the ferry to Montreux, the most beautiful empress of her time was murdered by an anarchist. On the other hand, when Napoleon's staff stayed at Beirut's castle, the White Lady appeared to the officers, and one of the generals was so impressed that he died. The French emperor himself, who was very superstitious, never wanted to sleep in the castle. Later, when he was building a magnificent palace in Paris, he noticed that a small house was occupying part of the land that the architect had planned for it. Knowing the legend of Joachim of Brandenburg, Napoleon did not want to demolish it or expropriate it, but to buy it from its owner for 10 times its value. When they say that one man's misfortune is another man's gain. Napoleon wanted to found a powerful and eternal dynasty, and he didn't want his descendants to be haunted by a sinister ghost like the lady in white. Incredible, isn't it?